So, hi everyone, and I'd like to say good morning. Finola Colgan, Development Officer of Mental Health Ireland, chairing this session with very eminent and very practical and very informed speakers this morning, which we hope will throw light on the whole topic of maintaining your mental health and the importance of that. And what's really important about this morning is, and the dimension that Teagasc has taken is, that mental health isn't an isolated issue. And this is what we'll see with all our speakers this morning. But I just thought before to start to share a story with you there, going back a couple of years ago. I was traveling in my car going between Kilbeggan and Athlone, and I heard a kind of a clank in the car, and I thought, it sounded more like a washing machine gone wrong. And I thought, what on earth is going on? And I thought, here, I've got to pull up. And I did pull up and into the side of the road. And as I did, the back tire, wheel, I should say, not the tire, the back wheel on the passenger side ran out in front of me across the road. And I thought, oh my God. And I looked left and right, no car coming up, no car going back down. Ran out, got my wheel back in. As it happened, I was near like a farmer's place, and apparently he ran up because he said the cows got very distracted by the horrible noise. And so anyway, like the sequence of the story was that somebody had put that tire, replaced my wheel on the Saturday in a particular situation. I remember that same Saturday afternoon, his mother-in-law with dementia was hovering around, and he was distracted, I think, because he was worried about her falling over a power machine or whatever. And so I suspect what happened was the nuts weren't tied properly. But the moral of the story really is, that when we take note of noise, of sound, or something's just not right, we'll respond to it. And this is kind of our message this morning in relation to our mental health and our well-being. And to kind of keep that in mind, we don't ignore those signs when it comes to technical stuff on our farms. We have a sick animal, we'll bring in the vet, and we'll get the help. But what we're encouraging you this morning is just to think about how well do you look after, how well do you maintain your health, not just your mental health, but all aspects of your health. Because as we'll see from the speakers to follow on, you'll see the link between your physical health, your mental health, and your social health. And, the old definition of health from the World Health Organization, that is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not just the absence of disease or infirmity. And we can all fit into that triangle of health from time to time. So I'd like to introduce the panel of speakers this morning, and in the order they're going to speak. Dr. Denis O'Hora, and he's from the psychology department of now known as University College Galway. And our second speaker is George Graham, and George comes from a very personal perspective on mental health and self-awareness, and as he would say himself, coming out of the tunnel of darkness. Our third speaker is Dr. Diana van Doorn, and Diana is with the Irish Heart Foundation. She's going to talk to our strengths, and I suppose that's and stress, and that's where maybe the physical health and how stress can impact on our health. And then we have Frances Bligh, who has very kindly stood in for John McNamara, who coordinated and initiated this webinar this morning. And Frances is a senior health safety specialist, and he's going to link in about strategies for mental health and well-being. And we have two guest speakers along with us as well this morning. We have Cathal William O'Reilly, and William is speaking from a personal experience and having published a book recently, and he's going to talk about the power of expression. And last but not least, we have David Meredith, who is a senior research specialist. And what's wonderful about all our speakers this morning, everybody has a particular area of expertise, which is useful, but it's also about how they integrate their research and that. So without much further ado, and I have another little yarn to tell you before we finish off, and so I'm going to welcome Dr. Denis O'Hora. So you're very welcome, Denis.
Thank you very much, Finola, and it's lovely to be with all of you this morning. And thank you all for making the time to have this discussion about mental health. Prioritizing our mental health is the first step to and valuing our mental health is the first step to getting ourselves back to working on improving ourselves on wherever we are on that continuum of mental health. So again, when we're going to talk about mental health, a lot of the time we can think in terms of categories, like you're either healthy or you're unhealthy, or you're either depressed or you're not depressed. And it's really a better place to think about it is to think about your health, whether it's physical or mental, is on a continuum, and you're always trying to maintain your physical and mental health and improve it if you can. And so wherever you are, whatever you're struggling with, whatever you think you've got in your back pocket and you've got taken care of, there's always a way to work with that. And today I'm going to speak to you today about mental health and safety. So introducing mental health in farming, and then talking about its implications for safety. And so I'm the director of the Master's of Consumer Psychology at the University of Galway, and I've been working with Teagasc on farm safety interventions for about the last 10 years. And so mental health is a very important aspect of keeping ourselves safe. As Finola mentioned, if your mental health if you're under stress and you're not on top of your game, then you might miss things, or you might take a shortcut because you feel like you have to, because that's the world you're living in at the time. And so that's why mental health is important to think about in terms of safety. So the overview here is that I'm going to introduce farmers' mental health. I'm going to talk a little bit about farm safety and how mental health affects safety. So farmers' mental health, there are common risk factors for farmers' mental health. That is, there are common issues that can cause distress when you're farming. And if you're sure any of your farmers are going to be particularly aware of all of these sources. And they include commodity prices, debt, climate change, drought, overwork, government regulations, isolation, role conflict, that is trying to do two things at once. And that's to do with the many hats you will wear as a farmer, particularly if you're a small farmer running a business. Very hard to be the accountant and the plumber and the animal handler at the same time. And if you're one when you should be the other, it can be an issue. And of course, time pressure. And then poor housing. This is more of an issue internationally than it is in Ireland, but of course, it is an issue. The issue we all are aware in Ireland about issues to do with stress around obtaining and maintaining housing. These were identified by Teagasc et al. In 2019, in a systematic review where they looked at the overall picture of farmers' mental health. So one question you might be thinking about is, do farmers have worse mental health than non-farmers? Well, when the researchers looked at the studies that are out there were 28 studies, and they found that in 20 of those, they found that farmers had worse mental health. And 18% of them found that farmers had better mental health. And then 10% indicated there was no difference. So how can that be? How is it that we don't know? Well, what we would say is there's evidence that the farmers can have poorer mental health, but it's not always consistent. Well, it depends on a few different things. It depends on how you measure mental health. You could, for example, we sometimes use a depression scale, and you're looking at how far along that scale are you. And what you're then comparing is someone who's higher in depression is lower in mental health. And that's how we use that scale to measure your mental health. We look at different types of behavior. So typically dairy farmers can be a little bit lower in mental health than other areas. But again, that's very dependent on the size of farm and the location of the farm in terms of the country context. The comparison group, are we comparing to office workers, or are we comparing to self-employed people? So self-employed people typically have lower mental health than people who have who are employed, because many of the issues that are handled, when you're employed, are not, you need to handle all of those issues as a self-employed person. You don't have the same safety net, and that lack of a safety net can lead to mental health issues. And then the country, of course, and the country context. So when we look across all of these studies, we can see, yes, we can see reasons why farming is a challenging occupation in terms of mental health, but we can also see that farmers also exhibit a high degree of resilience to those sources. we looked at this issue with Irish dairy farmers just in a study in 2016. And in our study, we found a few fairly straightforward findings, which are that mental health affects injury expectations. So then those individuals who have lower mental health tend to expect or to be more susceptible to injury. Financial threat and stress increases mental distress, and that increases expectations of injury. We found that social support reduces mental distress and injury expectations, and finally found that stress has an effect on mental distress, but actually stress can directly affect injury expectations as well. And if you'd like to, that paper is available online if you'd like to read more about it. And there's a shorter piece in the Teagasc magazine if you want to read that too. In terms of the sources of stress that we found in the Irish dairy farmers, we found that time pressure and bureaucracy were the greatest stresses. Our group, in fact, had very high social support. And one of the issues you'll find in research is that individuals who are under pressure, individuals with lower mental health, they're hard to research because it's hard to access them, right? If you think of what happens when you're under pressure, well, you're not looking around to take part in research. It's probably the last thing in your mind. And so it's often when we're looking at mental health and we're looking at stress, we always have to remind ourselves that it's very hard to access the people in most need. And now that is true for farmers and for non-farmers. But because farmers have, are exposed to a lot of these sources of stress, it's something we always have to bear in mind. And as I said, isolate this group that we dealt with at high social support. So how is this relevant to farm safety? Well, I'm sure you're all aware of the current situation in Irish farm safety. We had 200 work-related fatalities in agriculture from 2011 to 2020. We have this pattern over the years of higher fatalities in agriculture than other economic sectors in Ireland. Of the fatalities, we've about 90% were workers, 10% weren't. 42% of all work-related fatalities in Ireland occurred in agriculture. 67% of the non-worker victims were of childhood age, and 51% of worker victims were aged 65 and older. Now that is a slight overrepresentation, but it's only a slight overrepresentation in the older category because farmers are an older cohort. The mean age, the average age of a farmer is just below 60 in Ireland. And we've got a variety of different reasons for these accidents. Just to let you know that vehicles and tractors are the most dangerous aspect of farming in terms of the fatalities that are seen. So how does mental health affect safety? Well, mental distress or ill health increases the chances of workplace accidents or injury, and this is true across contexts. Why would that be the case? Well, mental health increases when you're more on your game and you're in a better place mentally. Well, your attention is better, you engage in self-protective behavior, you engage in planning, you upgrade your safety equipment, and you're buying into keeping yourself safe. When you have lower mental health, what happens is you tend to be more likely to engage in risk-taking. You're more likely to engage in risk-taking related to safety procedures, in relation to health, and also in relation to planning. So these mental health then can affect what we use in terms of looking at farm safety intervention. Is we use this COMBI model for capability and opportunity, support, motivation for behavior. And across these different aspects, within capability, we have physical and psychological. Within opportunity, we have physical and social. And within motivation, we have automatic and reflective. And these all contribute to behavior. And the most obvious part of this triad that mental health affects is the psychological capability. But in fact, when you drill down into it, mental health can affect all of these different aspects. It can affect your social support, in that social support supports your mental health. But when you're lower in mental health, you're less likely to go out there and talk to people, right? That's one of those horrible cycles that can happen. So you want to get out the worse you feel, the more you should be talking to people, right? And we can often sometimes avoid people when we don't feel so well, but that's the wrong thing to do. You get out there, get talking to people, even if it feels weird, just keep talking and get out and connecting with people. And so that's just one example of how mental health can affect our ability to improve our safety behavior. So that was a short synopsis of mental health and how it affects farm safety. And I just want to thank very much to John, Francis, Finola, and to all the team for hosting this webinar. I'll have to switch off myself at 10:45, but I can deal with questions in the chat if you're interested. So thank you very much for your attention today, and be safe.
Denis, that was such an amazing presentation, and just so important for people and to pick up, because what you're saying is very much common sense. And one of the really key points you've just made there is the importance of connecting and making contact. And it's so true that when our mood is low, that's when we're most likely not to bother making contact. And that's when we have to make that effort. And it kind of goes back to my story about the clanking, recognize it, get out there and do something about it. And this is being recorded, so I'm just going to encourage everybody. I'm definitely going to go back in and listen to your presentation again, Denis. So thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it, and thank you for your time and expertise. So next up, thank you. And so next up we have George Graham. George, you're very welcome, and thanks for being here this morning. I've met with George on numerous occasions as sessions that he's delivered, but I had reason because I'm involved with a project in Europe called Farm Resilience, and we needed a number of case studies from each country, i.e. Finland, Germany, Belgium and Spain, and George very kindly gave us his time and keep cheering at the same time nearly, and it's such a good story. And again, no more than with Denis, the time is short, but we can come back. So George, the floor is all yours now. 7 minutes or so. Thank you.
Good morning, Finola, and to all our speakers, some I haven't met before, but good morning, and hopefully to our many listeners. Yes, I think we can't underestimate the importance of what we're doing this morning and the time that we're given, which of course is the greatest gift we can give anybody. I would like to just start off briefly. Well, firstly, myself, I am a farmer, a sheep shearer. I've worked in every one of the 32 counties in Ireland and 30 in different countries. So you meet a lot of people, a lot of different experiences, but that didn't stop me. I've ended up in a very, very dark place in my life. But firstly, on the safety, as Dr. Denis has already mentioned, it's safety, general health and mental well-being, in my opinion, are all linked or can be linked in different situations. We're certainly more inclined, if we're not in a good place, to do things wrong, take chances, and more prone to having accidents, which is a big thing in farm safety. And our general health is so important as well. Particularly at men, we know it's 365 days in the year, but how many of us can take a half hour, make an appointment with a GP, get our bloods checked, get a health check done? No, we haven't time, we're too busy. But when something goes wrong, we have plenty of time. If we can't give an hour or two out of 365 days in the year, we really have a problem. So that's really important. Any of us that have a car or a Jeep, we have to go and get a test done on every year and pay for it. If we don't, we go out on the road, get penalty points and get fined, but we can't look after our own health. It's so important to look after our own health. So that's really important. But for me, with mental well-being, I ended up, I suppose, about 14 years ago, I remember giving a talk on safety and general health in the Ploughing Championships. And I was able to do that and cover up completely in the depths of depression. I was able to get young kids up involved shearing with me, do this for 3 days there and still cover up my own problem. Didn't want to talk about it, and I was eating myself away trying to hide my problem. Eventually, I actually tried to run away from my problem and fly away from my problem, which I did, but the problem came with me. I hadn't dealt with it. These things won't go away till you deal with them. And I have a card there, a very simple card, and on it, it just says a couple of things, but one of the things that says on it, take the first step, there is a light. At that stage where I flew away to was to the north of Norway. And I took what I described as my first step there. I was working for this couple this day, and I happened to say to the farmer's wife, I have a new customer 3 or 4 miles down the road. I don't think they have a lot of English. Could you help me with some translation? And she said, no problem. She was a psychiatric nurse. Just give me a ring or call anytime you want. Now, if I was being honest with myself, which I wasn't, that wasn't what I wanted to say to her. I wanted to say, I'm in the depths of depression. Could you help me? At that stage, I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't sleeping properly. And the only thing in my head 24/7, and I couldn't stop it happening. Now, this doesn't happen to everybody. I wanted to end my own life. I had what I would describe as this race in mind where you're all over the place. And I couldn't stop that. I couldn't control it. I couldn't pull the stopper. I couldn't pound the brakes and stop that, which is hard to believe and it's hard to understand it till you get out the other side. So I was in that situation. I did make up my own mind that day, if I got out of Norway in the one piece, that I would look for help. I had to do that myself. There's nobody going to come to you. You have to go to them when it's a mental well-being problem. And that's what I describe as the first step. Nobody can take step 2 before they take step 1. And there is so many different types of it. We will always recommend to go to your GP in case there's any underlying issues. Talk to a member of your family, ideal. Not the easiest thing to do, or talk to a friend. And that's so important. You must talk to somebody and unload that load that you're carrying. Now, I was actually put on some mild medication and mild sleeping tablets, etc. Some that I'm not into, but anyway, I was on them for a while and went off them. We often don't understand the consequences when you go on to them, but bigger consequences when you're going off of them. So I was on that road. I suppose one way of describing it is like going through a long, dark, narrow, twisty, and a very steep tunnel in some places. I don't like the word impossible, but I will say it's very, very difficult to get through that tunnel on your own. There is times it'll be so steep, you'll need someone to give you a push on. There is times that you may get very tired and you'll need someone's shoulder there to put your hand on to give you another push on. But if you can keep going and get near to the end of that tunnel, there is a light there, and that light will get brighter and brighter. But as I said earlier, there's nobody going to come to you. You have to go to them. Neither is there anybody going to come to you with a toolbox, a box of wrenches and a hammer to fix you. It does not work like that. There is people there that will help you to help yourself, but you have to take that first step. You may be the life and soul of a party, but you could be the most lonely person there. So that's so important. Just another little angle on one of the experiences, what I'd done at that time, even within my own family, I was able to cover up that, not eating properly, all this type of thing. But I had a daughter that year that had started in college. And every Sunday evening, she was getting a bus about 10 miles away to go back to college. I was always able to set up that I would bring her back to that bus. Now, she had brothers, sisters, and plenty of friends that would have done it. But the main reason I was doing that, and she didn't know, nobody else knew, I was 100% sure when I said goodbye to her that evening, she going off on the bus, that would be the last time that I would see her. I would have ended my own life before she came back the next weekend. That's the way I was. That's the way I was feeling. It's just nobody knows what's going on in anybody else's mind. It's just unbelievable. I mean, farming, as we know, can be a very lonely place. There's a lot of people working on their own now. There is also a lot of people, a wife or partner maybe working there at home. I would meet farmers some days. Oh, I'm extremely busy. I go up at 6 o'clock this morning. I've got a quick cup of tea, a slice of toast, and that might be 4 o'clock in the evening, and I haven't had time to get anything to eat since. Now, I have tried to drive my car and Jeep without petrol and diesel. It didn't work. It won't work if you don't look after your own body and fuel your own body properly and healthy. That's so important, to get that break and have that cup of tea. And you will hear people talking and referring to people. Oh, I see such a one down the road. I see him going across to the filling station there regularly in the morning to get a cup of tea or coffee. What's going on there? Can he not get that at home? Yes, in most places, most people can get that at home, but there mightn't be anybody at home to talk to. At least there's somebody going in the filling station, hopefully will say good morning, good afternoon to you, how are you? And that can mean so much to anybody if you're in a dark place, just to be recognised and felt wanted again. That's so, so important. And of course, as I mentioned, one of the greatest therapies of all is that cup of tea. Because what do we usually do for having that cup of tea? We chat and talk. It's one of the greatest medicines out there. Now, we do know and understand some people may need medication, but it's not everybody. It's so important for people to listen and talk. And for anybody that's involved in this, we all know that the important thing is listening and to be able to get those people to talk. You have to talk to get that problem out there. There is no point in trying to fix the branches on the tree if there's a problem with the root. You have to get to the root of that problem, talk about it and sort it out. Talking, listening and communication will solve an awful lot of problems in mental well-being. So taking that first step, looking for that help. As I mentioned earlier, you can be the life and soul of a party, but you might be the most lonely person there. The isolation and loneliness, it was mentioned by our first speaker. You have to be so many things to be a farmer. It used to be if you work quite hard, were a good stockman, a tillage man or whatever, you could solve most of the problems and make quite a bit of money. Now you can work your gut out 5-6 days a week, but if you don't get your paperwork right, you're going nowhere. And when does most farmers try to get their paperwork in order and do it? Maybe 9, 10 or 11 o'clock at night when they're absolutely tired, the hardest time you ever can do it. And most farmers don't like doing it anyway. But it's come to a stage that it's more important now to take a day off in the week and get your paperwork right than it is to do all that work. That's so important. But we can never underestimate the need for exercise. And most farmers you'll speak to, they are afraid to be seen out walking because they think if they're seen out for a walk, that the neighbour is going to say, well, if that fellow was doing anything at home, he wouldn't need to be out walking. When you're walking around your farm, that's not a relaxed exercise. You're looking and finding problems that need to be done and need to be fixed. When I mean going for a walk, it means going for a walk, thinking about nothing, completely relaxing, thinking about nothing. That's so important. We can't underestimate even the power of music and these type of things. You have to get a little bit of downtime for yourself, whether it's going to a match, going to a play, going to drama, whatever it might be. You must get that little bit of time. You must get that time off.
George, George, I hate to do this, but I'm cutting off in mid-flow. But again, just remind people this will be recorded and that hopefully we can pick up, because you've given us so many nuggets of information, pointers. Just, again, the whole idea of being self-aware of what we need to do. And I know this is kind of, and we knew this when we were putting this panel of speakers together, everybody could do it a whole half hour to do the thing, but hopefully we can have another session again with more time, George. So really appreciate your time this morning. And then we're also asking people and encouraging to put in questions and answers, and George will be in the panel for the panel discussion, George. So, but I know you'll appreciate me having to put you mid-flow as well.
No
so thank you so much, George, and your true to nature in your presentation. And so our next speaker is Dr. Diana van Doorn, and Diana is with the Irish Heart Foundation, and again has been like a massive link between the Irish Heart Foundation and Teagasc in producing publications on the importance of like stress and managing stress, and being innovative and creative in how they've gone about doing that. Because I think the really important thing for us all to recognize here this morning is, and it's very clear from the two speakers, farming is a place of work, farming is work, farming is a profession, farming is a business. But and just by way of interest, I have a husband for a farmer or a farmer for a husband, so I'm under no illusions about stress, anxiety, getting to places and so on. Like it is, and that is the nature of farming. But the important thing is that, as our previous speakers have said, it's important to slow down and to give yourself time. And so I'd like to welcome Diana now to make your presentation. Diana.
Thank you very much. And thank you to George and Denis as well. They are very interesting presentations. I am linked to, I work for Teagasc, by the way. I was working with the Irish Heart Foundation
my apologies.
in collaboration at this program. So I will discuss farmer stress and well-being today, which was measured as part of a heart health prevention program, so a physical health program, targeted at male farmers, the Farmers of Heart Cardiovascular Health Program. And this program included 868 male farmers and consisted of a baseline health check carried out by the Irish Heart Foundation, a lifestyle change intervention, and then a repeat health check at week 52. And we recruited, so we met farmers at marts and agri-branches. So it was an outreach program. So first, what is stress? Stress is a human response to challenging or difficult situations which cause worries or tensions, and it can lead to feelings of being overwhelmed or run down. Work-related stress is the response from people to work demands and pressures which do not match their knowledge and or skills or expectations and can challenge their ability to cope. And it is important to say that stress is a normal response to daily life or work pressures. But prolonged stress, that is like if you're feeling stressed often or all the time, can lead to mental health problems like anxiety, panic attacks, and or depression. Well-being is defined as feeling good about yourself, the world around you, and functioning well in daily life most of the time. It also means that you can being able to cope with the normal stresses of life and work. So looking at research into farmer stress, and in 2018, as part of the Teagasc National Farm Survey, farmers were asked if they experienced farm work-related stress within the past 5 years, and 57% of the farmers said they did. And stresses were weather, workload, finance, animal health for dairy and beef farmers, scheme compliance, labor access for dairy farmers, and security, such as rural crime. And a qualitative research among male farmers also showed that a negative social perception towards farming and farmers was a stressor for farmers. Like Denis said, dairy farmers were more likely to report stress, and younger age was associated with higher levels of stress, and stress levels declined with increased age. Based on TILDA data, farmers of 50 years and over on average recorded lower scores for both symptoms of anxiety and depression compared to non-farming counterparts. And it is important to note, this is the same study as Denis quoted, that social support was found a mediating factor for stress among farmers, so a protecting factor. So how is stress linked to heart disease? Stress is a risk factor for heart disease, and to illustrate that, research has shown that people who experience work stress occasionally have 1.4 times higher risk for a heart attack, and people who experience work stress often or all the time have 2.1 times higher risk for heart attack compared to those who have low or no stress. In relation to high job strain, which is high job demands and low job control, think of weather, things you can't control, that is associated with 2.2 times higher risk for premature mortality from heart disease. And a low effort reward imbalance, or imbalance that's high working demands, low job rewards, is associated with 2.4 times higher risk for premature mortality of heart disease. As said before, there's a huge safety risk with stress. Research shows that stress can lead to decreased concentration, impaired decision-making, and fatigue. And research among farmers showed that farmers who experience stress have 1.8 times higher risk for a farming injury. So what does stress do to the body? It activates the fight or flight mode, which is a complex interaction between hormones and bodily reactions. And in simple wording, it makes your heart pumps harder and more blood flows to your heart, which makes your blood pressure goes up. Now, this happens with every form of stress. So if you have to hit the brakes in traffic, or what Finola was saying, or something happens on the farm, this straight away activates your fight or flight mode. And then when the stress goes down, when the situation is over, your body goes back to normal. But if you experience stress often or all the time, this fight or flight mode stays activated, which can increase your blood pressure, risk for heart disease, acute cardiac event, type 2 diabetes, and it weakens your immune system. Stress also can make you feel worried, nervous. It might get you irritable. It can lead to headaches. It affects your eating habits. It can make your other health issues worse, and it can lead to overuse of alcohol, cigarettes, or other substance abuse. And again, I really want to point out, important is that social support is found a mediating factor for stress among farmers, and a positive sense of well-being is associated with decreased cardiovascular risk, also among those with stress levels. So well-being and social support are very important constructs. Going to the Farmers Have Heart Cardiovascular Health Program, at baseline, the majority of farmers experienced stress to some extent, but 13% of farmers reported feeling stressed often or very often all the time. So they are at high risk for prolonged stress symptoms. 35% of the farmers scored poor or below average on a well-being scale. Looking at changes between week 52 and baseline, we saw that experience of stress had significantly decreased at week 52, so had improved. And this can be explained that the lifestyle changes, which were part of our program, overlap with stress management strategies, including healthy diet, increased levels of physical activity, stop smoking, low or responsible alcohol consumption, minding your sleep, breathing exercises, and connecting. Interestingly, as you can see, the proportions of farmers with poor or below average well-being had not improved or stayed similar. And this leads to the conclusion that reducing stress alone is not sufficient or enough to improve farmer well-being. And this calls for the need to more understanding between the relationship between stress and well-being and also health. I also think it's important that we start looking at more research into how we can tap into supporting or protecting factors like social support networks in helping farmers to manage stress and well-being, understanding how various factors such as gender and rurality impact farmer stress and well-being, and also research into long-term effects of stress on farmers, as most research looks at short-term stress. So engaging farmers in health is important, and the Farmers of Heart Cardiovascular Health Program adopted an outreach and farmer-centered approach. So we met farmers in a space where they felt comfortable and safe. We spoke their language. We adopted a personal approach and a non-judgmental attitude. We offered farmers choice and autonomy in their health prevention. And this resulted in high engagement among farmers with the program, but it also resulted that farmers opened up easily, as I can say it like that, at the location and shared personal experiences, including grief, loneliness, health scares, fears, anxiety, and mental health issues. And that felt very special to gain the trust of farmers on these locations. But it also illustrates that farmers do talk if you provide a safe space where they can be open and frank. And all our researchers and nurses were trained to signpost farmers to their GP or services for further support. And I would like to advocate that physical health interventions help detecting early risk factors like we did in heart disease or other health issues, but they can also play a role in brief mental health support interventions and guide farmers to available support services. So I advocate for adopting more holistic approaches and collaborative approaches to address both the interrelated physical and mental health needs of farmers. And I would like to close and I know, Finola, you will signpost, but I would like to say, please, if you experience prolonged stress or having difficulties coping, look for support by visiting your GP or contacting support services. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for such an informative collective presentation, Diana. And again, it's really like there's a power bank of information being built here this morning. And like clearly we're all reflecting the same message. And the one very important denominator clearly this morning, because it's about maintaining mental health, is how when we have poor mental health, how it impacts not alone on safety on the yard, but also on our physical health as well. And if ever there was a reason to look after your mental health and your statistics around stress and heart disease, like, and then of course, you know, it's also about your diet, your exercise, and all of that as well. So again, very, very powerful key message there as well. So thank you so much for that presentation. And again, we'll have a panel discussion afterwards as well. So, and you know, like you used a really powerful word there, overwhelming. And you know, the information this morning is positive delivery of overwhelming information that we need to take on board as a community, as a society, and to reach out to farmers. But equally, I do believe that farmers, it's important that they take personal responsibility when this information is shared with them as well. So next up then is Frances Bligh. Frances, you're very welcome. And I know you're standing in for John as well, but I know you're all partners in the one organisation. So, and you're going to look at mental health strategies. So thanks very much for that.
Hello, Finola. Hi to everybody watching. Yes, just to come after all those excellent speeches, or excellent presentations, and the large amount of information that's been provided, I suppose it's really My role and John McNamara, we work, I suppose, to try and ensure that farmers are hearing these messages and are, connecting with the strong message that it's important for them to mind themselves, as all the speakers have said, as it is to try and do the work on the farm. If they aren't in good form, if they're not able to do the jobs, and if they're not able to do them in a way that, that they're not under pressure, then it means that, farming isn't going to be an enjoyable experience, and that then means that every job gets a little bit harder. And as Denis had said, injury rates can increase, and if you're not in the right form for the jobs you're trying to do. So myself and John McNamara, John can't be here today. He has another engagement, but we work in that particular role as health and safety specialists for Teagasc, and we work with the advisors across the country to do that work. Now my presentations have just stopped. So just, I suppose, to set really a context, and I know there's a lot of stats and information being presented, but what message has been delivered here? The main message here is that, that farmers, the studies are showing that farmers have a slightly higher, I suppose, how would I put it, that their mental health is a lower level maybe than the population generally. You can see there that large statistic there, the difference of between 3% and 6% for being lightly depressed in that particular study that was done through the HSA. So it's important, I suppose, and it's using the comparisons of the World Health Organization wellbeing scores. So it's important, I suppose, to be aware of that, and that these issues are out there. Other information we've heard from previous speakers in relation to the 57% experience in stress. Really, I suppose the important aspect there that maybe Diana has covered on as well is the doctor visit. Haven't seen a doctor in over 12 months. The social contact there, 75 to 85% daily social contact. Break from farming. How many farmers can honestly say that they get away from farming? 49 to 52% in the last year. There's a large percentage there that aren't getting away from farming and aren't getting a rest and aren't getting a break. And it's back to what George has said earlier in relation to, getting away from the farm, not just going down the farm for a walk, looking at all the jobs that needs to be done, getting away from the farm if at all possible, and trying to get that space, I suppose, to be able to have free thoughts and not to be focused on all the jobs that need to be done, and increasing maybe stress levels. What is the advisory service doing? So the Department of Agriculture have a FOSS Farm Advisory Service list of over 800 advisors. They are Teagasc and private consultants, mainly involved in regulatory and compliance. They're helping farmers with the likes of nitrates, all the various schemes that are available through the Department of Agriculture, making sure that they apply and that they're, abide by the rules of those particular schemes, or encouraging farmers to do that. The Teagasc service, I suppose, is part of the Agriculture and Food Development Authority. And, there's a research role in that particular remit, and a knowledge transfer role. So we have 500 advisors and specialists that work in that particular area, and all their emphasis is on trying to help farmers in whatever way that they can. And that really means that we're working through directly, individually with farmers, also working in groups with farmers, and also working through media channels and webinars, papers, newsletters, and text messages. Any way we can kind of interact with the farming community, we try to do that, and we try to get the messages out. And this particular message about the importance of positive mental health is as important as any other message that we try to help to communicate. The advisory engagement, there's about a third of clients, or a third of farmers are engaged with Teagasc, a third are engaged with private consultants, and there's a third that aren't engaged with any advisory service. And I suppose it's important for those farmers to be aware that there is, I suppose, support services there available to help farmers. As we said earlier, the issues that arise, I suppose, associated with mental health, sometimes they can stem from issues that are happening on the farm, and the advisory service is there, and the private consultants, to help farmers with those issues that are happening on the farm. And our role also is to encourage you as a farmer, as all the speakers have said, to go to get help when you need help. As Finola has says, when you know there's something wrong, or you hear there's something wrong, do something about it. What other publications are available? We have the Staying Fit for Farming, which is a consultative booklet. You can see all the various agencies involved in actually putting that booklet together. So they're all present. And every message that we can fit into that booklet is there, and it's in a very good, strong, I suppose, booklet for farmers to have. We have the Positive Mental Health in Farming leaflet as well. Coping with the Pressures of Farming booklet was also a consultative booklet that was put together by a large number of organisations. The HSA have recently put together, and the Farm Safety Partnership, a lovely booklet with a large number of different pieces of information. I know George was involved in that. And Pat Griffin of the HSA is strongly involved in it as well. And also this particular video, Finola, yourself, and George was involved in putting together that video. And it's very important for people to look at this video, to engage with it, and maybe get a copy of the booklet. And any farmers that maybe haven't access to the internet, that maybe sometimes some other farmer might be able to help you get access to these resources. The Unfirm Ground initiative, very good initiative, initiated by the Department of Agriculture, funded by the Department of Agriculture. Basically this was a training course for advisors. There is a training course for advisors, whereby they're trained to, I suppose, help farmers in the area of mental health and be aware of the signs of mental health, and have the ability and I suppose interest in encouraging farmers to realize there's issues and to do something about those issues. So that particular training is ongoing, and Mr. Conor Hammersley is doing a research project on it at the moment, or research master's, research PhD. We'll find the results of that very soon. The Department of Agriculture at the Plough announced further funding for a further rollout of this in the coming 2 to 3 years. So that's a very good initiative. So really, I suppose it's social support is what my main message here is, trying to gather farmers together, so that we have a collective. We're all maybe dealing with sometimes the same problems. We all see the problem in different ways, and individually we need to do, as George says, we need to do what we have to do for ourselves. And really my message here is that Teagasc is here to help, and we're supported by all the various organisations, and many of whom are represented here today.
Francis, thank you so much for that presentation. Again, so informative. Like, your key word is about the importance of interaction and accessing resources. And like, there is all those resources available on the Teagasc website. I mentioned earlier, I'm with Mental Health Ireland. I've been like the national lead to do with farmers and mental health. And so we developed a website again in partnership with Teagasc at the outset of COVID. We're in the process of updating that website, and it's a bit like the whole website of Mental Health Ireland is being upgraded. But in the interim, it's there, farming, resilience, and all those publications that Francis has just mentioned are there and free to download. But the really important point is that interaction, and none of this information, it only becomes valuable when you actually download it, access it, read it in your own time. Like, there's all the books on stress, anxiety. And an important message as well to reach out to people is that, people recover from their mental health setbacks. Like, there's a lot of language, a lot of literacy around mental health. Sometimes people think of it as mental illness, but clearly from what we've seen this morning, mental health is a core part of your health. And it's very, very important that we keep a nice balance between all dimensions of that health, and that it's not a standalone, like east is east and west is west, as we've clearly seen from all the speakers, that it's linked in. So I'd like to welcome Cathal. Cathal is going to share his experiences, and you'll forgive me if I cut through at some point, Cathal, because I know
no problem, Finola,
I have a lot to say, and we're coming fast on to 11 o'clock. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Finola, and
Yeah.
thank you to Teagasc this morning, and to all the speakers thus far. I'm particularly blown away by the resources available across the board. The help is there. Now, I won't take up too much of your time this morning. I know it's been a lot of information, and I'll try and keep it as simple as I can. Now, I have 5 minutes, I believe, Finola. So
yeah, it might be a little bit tighter, Cathal, because it's
right.
now, yeah, it might be a little bit. So, but we can bring you back again. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, No problem at all. Thanks, Finola. So if we say I have 4 minutes, then I'll try and break it down in 5 steps for you all this morning.
Please.
And
Thank you.
My little story. Well, I don't know what it's like to be a farmer, but I do know what it's like to be self-employed. I started my first business when I was 19 years of age in the family business. So I know about the pressures, and as our previous speakers mentioned, Denis, particularly, the first thing he said was the common stressors of a farm, in that debt, money, banks, being self-employed. I won't go into it, but my business started at 19. It closed down when I was 21. Now, number 2, I had a nervous breakdown when I was 22. Okay. Now, you might think 21, it closed down. 22, there's a year there in the difference, and you're right. Now, this lecture is about safety. And when I was 22, I felt my safety was in danger. I hit a wall when the business closed down, to put it straight. Had a nervous breakdown, but there was 6 months where I was very, very acutely unwell, very unwell. I live today well with bipolar disorder. I live openly with it. But there were 6 months that I went, and a common theme here this morning is get the help early. Get the help early. Don't go 6 months of being undetected and unseen with mental health, because it can lead to a road of destruction and disaster. And it did so in my life because of the 6 months. At 28, so there's a gap there of 6 years. I spent time in different hospitals, getting better, getting well. One common thing here this morning is social connection. Okay. As Denis said, Dr. Denis O'Hora said, keep talking. Get, as Francis said, get a break from the yard. As Finola said, get a break from the farm. Free thoughts. It might be going down to the shops to get a breakfast roll, but that interaction will keep you going, and keep that going, is what I'd say. That's all I have to say this morning. I don't really have much else to add, Finola.
But Cathal, like what you've said, the words of wisdom, like they've just flowed from you. They're messages, and the kind of an important point is, like, we look at farming, it's a business, but like I'm employed by an organisation, Mental Health Ireland. Like I've got all the supports of an employer. Farmers don't have that, but Teagasc and various other agencies fit into that. So, but we will have you back again.
Oh, you have it.
Yeah, so
you have it now, Finola, and being self-employed, as you're saying there, is no joke. And thanks everyone for attending. Thanks to the speakers, and thanks for having me on.
No,
cheers.
Very powerful, and sometimes less is more, Cathal. So I'd like to welcome David Meredith, and David, you're welcome. And David is a senior researcher again, and kind of like it's all tying in very nicely, David. So thanks for your time as well this morning.
Good morning, Finola, and thank you, and thanks to all the presenters for really, really powerful stories and really good summaries of a lot of the research that's out there. And I know that the other participants in the seminar, there's lots of experienced researchers who have actually undertaken some of the work that's been quoted, and I know Mary Brennan's here. And there's a lot of other people who are really interested and engaged in supporting farmers to protect and retain their mental health. There's really 2 points that I would make here. I'm only going to make 2 points because a lot of really good things have been said already. But the first one is that all of us have mental health, but not all of us have mental illness. And this is an important point, because when we go out to help people, we need to think very carefully about who it is that we're trying to help and how we're trying to help. There's aspects of work that we can do, and we saw the resources that Francis highlighted there. They're very much engaged at early engagement. That's about trying to help people at a very early stage to inform them about their mental health, and they're excellent at doing that. But we've also heard from other people here, George and Carl in particular, who talked about their personal experience and the need to get other specialist supports and services. And that's where people like ourselves need to be really careful about how we engage in this topic and how we support other people and signpost them on to other services. So they're the two key points that I would make. So thanks very much, Finola.
No, and two very, I mean, it's just the information here and the sharing and the awareness is just so important. Francis clicked the record button when we started out, so this is going to be there for people and access to the papers and that. And it's a reminder to us all in our capacity, whether we're a farmer's wife, daughter, mother, parent, whatever, you know, we all have a part to play, and it's very important that we all take a certain element of personal responsibility as well. And the most important point coming out here from everybody is that important point of connection. Mental Health Ireland it's World Mental Health Month, so to speak, and we're having a series of Connect cafes right around the country. Maybe, you know, when a farmer is in town, maybe just come in. We have one in the Bridge Centre here in Tullamore this morning as well. And mental health is a human right, is a universal human right, is the theme of the World Mental Health Month. And that's for everybody, like, you know, to be able to look after their mental health. So I'm conscious that we're 11 o'clock and we probably comments on that. But just before we kind of maybe take an extra few minutes if possible. So at short notice, I've been asked to represent the organisation at a mental health Europe roundtable discussion on the team. So I went about booking my flight. Then I went to look for my passport, couldn't find it. And I thought, oh my God, where is it? Where is it? And I went through shelves, pulled out books, went into drawers where I'd normally put it, pulled it out, went back 3 and 4 times. And like I spent about 3 hours looking for it. And then I said, oh my God, I'm getting out of the house, went up, got a bit of grass. And I came back and my son said to me, he said, Mommy, did you find your passport? And I said, no, Niall, but I'm giving 50 euros whoever finds it. And he said, is this your passport? And I said, what? And there it was in his hand. And I said, where was it? It was on the windowsill at a window at the end of the stairs. And there it was all the time. And I bypassed it 100 times that day. So really the moral of the story for me is that sometimes the solution is in front of us, but we miss it because we're perhaps stressed, anxious. Maybe we don't trust ourselves. Maybe we're concerned about how people might think. But you know what? You're the most important person. And, you know, you've got to be able to mind yourself first and foremost, say. So it's, you know, and that's what everybody has been sharing with us here this morning. It's not being selfish to put yourself first. Things will flow. We've seen the importance of that in relation to health and safety on the farm, and especially stress. Not alone can it cause accidents, but it can maybe cause premature death as well. And bear in mind all the really important points. Francis, I know, can we take a couple of questions, do you think?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Maybe a few comments just to start.
Yeah. Thanks, Francis. Yes.
Just for George there, Laura just said, you know, your story will resonate with so many. And she thanks you for I suppose, making your story available for people to hear. And, you know, it's very practical. And, you know, the advice that you give to every farmer, she says, well done and keep well. Another anonymous attendee just says, George, you know, they admire your intense courage for facing up to your issues and getting through this episode. I love your analogies, and you know, you need to put fuel in the car. That analogy that you gave is very powerful. And there's a question there: is it an option for Teagasc to work with existing structures, for instance, discussion groups, to improve social connection and interaction for farmers? Maybe David, if you're still on the line there, would you like just to take that? I know I could take it myself, but maybe just you'd like to comment on it. Maybe David, you're not just there. So we do, and we need to, you know, we need to continue and to do more. We do have a large number of discussion groups. Myself and John McNamara work as specialists. We try to gather the information from all the research and all the various organizations that are relevant, and we try to distill that into practical messages that we work with advisors across the country on, and we encourage those advisors to bring these topics up at their discussion groups and any events that they have and any training courses that they organize and any interactions or individual discussions. So from time to time, you know, we really encourage advisors from time to time to get that message out. There is a message there as well from another anonymous attendee saying that advisors are very busy, lots of work to be done, more work than can be done, and it's very hard to think about this particular topic, mental health, on top of all the other work, and that it's important that advisors, I suppose, that the resources are there, that they have that space and time to do that type of work, and that's acknowledged, especially at the moment with all the various schemes that farmers are involved in. But all those schemes give advisors, I suppose, an opportunity to talk with farmers. And sometimes those conversations can lead to other things that can be talked about. An excellent webinar. Obviously, it'd be nice if we had more time, Finola, the next one,
Yep.
maybe. Yeah. Alma just says thank you to Cathal for the very strong message he's given, and it's important to hear these stories, because people that maybe are struggling don't think that anybody else is, and that isn't the case. Another comment, I suppose, from attendee in relation to taking responsibility, and looking for the help. And as Finola said, if you know there's something small bit wrong, do it early. As Cathal said, do it early. You don't be waiting. Excellent speakers from Teagasc. Would be great if there could be more awareness of mental health within Teagasc and more discussion on work vivo. Yeah, that's taken as a comment as well. Another question maybe there, Finola, for you in relation to signposting and
Yep.
a HSC contact, and is there where where are you recommending after today if someone needs a little bit of help? We've heard from George, we've heard from Cathal, and anybody else that would like to answer that question, please do so.
Yeah, so the absolute go-to all yourmentalhealth.ie, and it's broken down into counties and that. I know it can be frustrating going to websites and another number, whatever, but that's kind of the world we live in terms of that. Teagasc has a whole area as well in terms of social media, communications, up-to-date news. Health and Safety Authority, wonderful stories there. I know you mentioned George's story. I had a cameo role in that. And then clearly Mental Health Ireland. Apart from our farming resilience page, we have an awful lot of resources for family carers, adolescents, recovery, because it's really important for people to realise, because you have a mental health, like some people call it a challenge, an issue, whatever, it's not necessarily a mental illness. And sometimes if it's a mental illness, at least you can diagnose it and it can be treated. But mental health, if we, as Diana said, if we don't look after it, if we don't build up on it, we don't get the help at an early stage, then it can be something much more serious as well. So, but because we're going to be, this has been recorded and it'll be on the Teagasc website, we can put a list of additional sources along with it, Francis.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Anybody else like to comment on that, just in relation to, where you'd recommend farmers go? Yes, George.
I'd just like to comment there. Well, I'd like to make the point, as I mentioned earlier, the most important gift we can give anybody is our time, which everybody has done this morning. And I'm quite happy for my name and number to be out there. If it's just a contact for somebody to ring, I can't solve all problems, but I certainly can find people that will help you if that's the case. I can give it out publicly now or whatever.
Yeah.
If you're happy to, George.
Well, George Graham, I'm chairman of our Organisation Awareness SETU, and my own personal contact number is 087 2569 072. As I said earlier, we can't solve all problems, but if we can't solve them, we'll certainly find other help for you.
And also to remind our participants that George's video clip is in one of the Health and Safety Authorities stories of recovery and as well. It's only 2.5 minutes, but it's well worth listening to. Yeah.
And just to add, Finola, a large number of those publications are in every Teagasc office across the country.
Yeah.
So, and every advisor that you might ring will be able to get you a copy.
Yeah.
So if you'd like any of those copies, make contact with your local advisor, and we can make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And just maybe again, just there mid-August, I got a stress phone call from a farmer. and he was concerned because his calves weren't tagged from earlier on in the year. He was in an awful state about it. So I wasn't kind of my area of expertise as such. So I phoned somebody in the department and got advice and said, look, the best advice to give this gentleman is, and that was that. And then he said, just find out how many calves was involved. So I phoned the gentleman back as promised. He told me 6. And I thought, oh my God, like I thought you had about 60 or whatever. But what really happened was I got the real conversation after that. His marriage was broke up, a difficult relationship. His son was in care for mental health, serious mental health. He'd gone missing for 2 days. They didn't know where he was. So you just never know when somebody phones you, and just to be able to access the help. It might start off as something simple, but it's about what George and everybody is saying, just to listen. You don't necessarily have the solutions, but listening is a big part of the solution. Saying, and you know, because you have to look after yourself, but pointing people and suggesting, and just even they mightn't want to talk, but just say, you know, you have my number if you want to text me.
Okay, so there's a few other questions, and we'll get back individually to those people, Finola.
Yes, okay. Yeah. So I suppose, Francis, we're getting it hard to close ourselves off, obviously. But on behalf of John McNamara, for organising this event, like he set out about it there earlier on, and wanted to raise the awareness that today is World Mental Health Day. There'll be lots of talk, lots of awareness about it. So John and Francis and David, you know, you've led the charge once again in putting this program together. I was honoured and delighted that when John phoned me to ask me to chair, and I appreciated that opportunity, and you know, solidifies partnerships with Mental Health Ireland and Teagasc. But I sincerely want to thank all our speakers this morning, George, Diana, Dennis, Cahill and David, and to remind people that this will be recorded and put up on the Teagasc website as well for further reference. So it might be a good session maybe to share with family members, maybe to sit down, have a cup of coffee. It mightn't be quite Netflix style, it mightn't be binge watching, but there's a lot of sound information given here this morning. And just remember, every day may not be good, but there's some good in every day, and to be able to find that as well. So thanks very much to everyone, and the best of luck to everyone as well in all that you're doing and achieving. In like, clearly farming is stressful, but it's manageable when we look after ourselves.